Hi, welcome to Secure the Seat Live. My name is Minda Harts and I'm your weekly host. I know it's a holiday and I'm so happy that you're joining us. You could be anywhere in your house, but you're here with us. And so I'm very excited to have you. I know today is Martin Luther King Day, and I just want to have a moment of silence for just his act of courage and bravery. We are all beneficiaries of his courage. And I know my life's purpose is to hopefully be courageous enough that somebody also benefits from it too. And so let's just take a moment just to acknowledge just his contributions so that we're able to show up in the ways that we need to today. Awesome. Well, you're in store for a really amazing show today. I'm excited to invite a special guest. You may have read her book. If not, we'll make sure that you have all of the information available to you so that you can get it. But today's guest is Amber Cabral. She is an inclusion strategist, an author, a speaker, an amazing person. Welcome, Amber, to Secure the Seat Live. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining me on this holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important one. This is a good conversation to have today.
It absolutely is. And I know that many people are familiar with your work, but for those who are just meeting you for the first time, will you tell everybody a little bit more about you?
Sure. So my name is Amber Cabral, as Minda mentioned, and I am an inclusion strategist, and I have my own organization that I do inclusion and equity work for called Cabral Co. And I support largely Fortune ranked organizations with their inclusion strategies. That's my primary job. I also chair an organization called Brown Girls Do. Some of you may know it as Brown Girls Do Ballet. And it's a nonprofit that's focused on celebrating, elevating, and supporting ballet dancers of color. So that's what I do.
I love that. And if you want to find out more about Amber, we're going to drop that link inside the chat so that you can go there and find out a little bit more about all the things that Amber is up to. And also, of course, book her, consult with her, all the things. We'll talk about that more. But Amber, today we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but more so allyship. And I would love for you to define allyship, or being an ally and being an advocate, and what that looks like or what it could look like in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to try to explain it as simple as possible. I think that's one of the things that people know me for. So allyship just means I am trying to get to know someone who is different than I am, specifically someone that experiences privilege different than I do. And so the labor in that is being able to say, how do I experience privilege? What does privilege look like for me? And then looking around you to say, okay, who is potentially marginalized in this circumstance? Who experiences something different? How can I get to know them so that I can better extend my privilege to them so they have the opportunity to experience some of the things that I experience all the time? That's a really simple way of thinking of allyship. In the workplace, this can come to life a lot of ways. It can be, having visibility to job opportunities. We know that a lot of times we hear about jobs because of folks we know, right? And everybody doesn't have the privilege to have those same connections. And so something as simple as that can be an opportunity to serve as an ally in the workplace.
I love that. And I like how you keep it impactful but simple. People can dig their teeth into that definition, and I love that. And what I also love is that we have Amber here today, so you get to ask her the questions that you might not get a chance to ask. So make sure that you start dropping those questions in the chat. Shout out to those who are watching us on LinkedIn Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. So make sure that you go ahead and drop those in. But Amber, you talked about what it could look like in the workplace. And I've heard you talk about modeling inclusion. Yeah. What is one step our audience could take to model that in a virtual environment? Because I know some people think that they can't model it in this virtual environment, which I beg to differ.
Yeah, I beg to differ as well. In fact, sometimes it presents even more opportunities because you kind of have a window into someone's house. Like I'm in your house, you're in my house, And so we have a little bit more intimacy happening. And that also causes us to be a bit more relaxed. And so, in my opinion, it kind of opens the door a bit more for opportunities for us to role model inclusion. And what that can look like is something as simple as recognizing when someone has children and, they may need a moment. It doesn't have to be a big production when the little one pops into the screen, right? Like we want to make people still feel, like they are a part of the workplace the same way as someone that potentially does not. It's also recognizing that everyone doesn't have a nice, pretty background like you and I have going on, and create opportunities for us to, be courteously inquisitive, and say, oh, I noticed that, I saw your cat's tail waving, and connect that way. So you have like a bit more resource to actually do some of the connecting that's really important to being inclusive. And also you get to exercise that restraint, about your own bias, which you don't get the same way when we are live. And so, I think honestly, the virtual experience we're having right now creates new and different opportunities to be inclusive of other folks.
I love that so much. And we all can do that, right? This isn't just reserved to, oh, I hope all the white people do this, right? This is something we can all do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what inclusion's about. It's not, I tell people this all the time, like it's not just for white folks. It's not just for people who are able-bodied. It's not just for men. It is for everyone. Everyone has some degree of privilege. And so one of the things I always use as an example, of privilege is, ask yourself, did you wake up this morning with hot running water? Most people are going to be like, yeah, unless there was something wrong, right? Like you probably woke up this morning with hot running water. And if you didn't, you were like, what is going on? You didn't think about it either. You jumped in the shower. You didn't even bat an eyelash, right? Like you just went ahead about your day. And so it's just that simple for us to exist in our privilege. And so we have to be purposeful to think about like, okay, how can I extend whatever that privilege might be to someone else? There's some 12, 15% of the world's population that doesn't have clean water, let alone running water. And so it's the labor of like recognizing like we have privilege all the time and figuring out how we can uniquely extend that to someone else. And that's not just a white people thing, it's everybody. Although there are some things that white people are in a unique position to definitely work on.
Absolutely. And in your book, I'm sure you probably highlight some of those things.
I do, definitely. I definitely do. The thing about work is it's very white. Like corporate environments are very white. And so I think a lot of the tactics that I suggest in Allies and Advocates do work really well for white people, but they are also tactics that work really well if you are the person that could be on the receiving end. If you're the person being, extended the allyship, how can you navigate that? How can you provide guidance, right? It's a two-way street. If we want it to work, we've both got to kind of play our parts in order for those relationships to be successful.
I love that so much. And even as you were talking, I was thinking that even allyship is a privilege because not all even Black women or women of color or, those who feel as though they're on the margins even experience allyship. There's some that will go their whole working career and never experience that.
Yes. So. Yes. And by experiencing it, you learn how to do it. And so people who don't experience it end up not knowing how to do it. They don't know how to serve for allies for those that are coming behind them in their career path or even new talent that's entering the organization. And so it's a really critical skill to role model so that we imitate each other. Other people learn how to do it by watching us do it first.
Absolutely. Well said. Last week, I told myself I'm going to buy a tambourine because, my guests, they drop all of these gems and I'm like, I just want to hit it. And I bought one, Amber, and I forgot it in the hallway. And so I'm kicking myself right now. So next time, but let's take a couple of questions from the audience. Thank you to those who dropped in your questions. We'll try to get as much as we can. And Amber's book is inside. The link is inside. So make sure you go ahead and just add that to your cart and get that good deed done today. Let's see. We have so many great questions. Amber, can you talk about allyship versus mentorship?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So allyship is when I am, recognizing my own privilege and figuring out how I can extend that to someone else. Okay, so that's allyship. Mentorship is guidance. It's guidance. It's I am building a relationship with someone and saying, how can I potentially provide some perspective, some guidance, some support, help them navigate their career, gain access. Now, one of the ways you can serve as an ally is by being a mentor. So that's where those two words connect. And people do kind of say like, oh, well, I don't need to be an ally. I am a mentor. No, by being a mentor, you are serving as an ally, but there are a lot of ways to be an ally. Another way people may show up as an ally is by being a sponsor, right? Which is different than mentorship. Sponsorship is more about, I'm going to talk about you. I'm going to celebrate you. I'm going to say your name in rooms that you might not otherwise have access to, right? So we have to kind of think of it as allyship is the bucket. And how can I pull things out that I can say, okay, I am filling my allyship bucket by being a mentor to some people. I'm filling my allyship bucket by extending my network so that other folks have access to people that I don't otherwise have. I'm extending my allyship by, so it's those behaviors that kind of fill our allyship bucket. That's a great question. Thanks for asking that.
I love that. And we have another question here. Amber, are there any strategies for increasing belonging? Great question.
Yeah. So here's the thing about belonging. It is cultural, and every company has its own culture. Every community has its own culture. And so the strategy is going to shift a little bit around that. The thing that you want to first start to understand is, what is belonging here? Is belonging, we are including people in meetings? Is it we are communicating well across departments? Is it, people are participants and have visibility to one another's work? Is it I make sure to celebrate people openly? It's getting really clear about what is the culture here. And then taking it a step further and saying, okay, who might not be having that experience? How can I make sure that they're a part of it? That's what belonging is. I feel like I can get the same thing that anyone else in this room can. If I do a great job and this other person does a great job, we're going to have access to the same type of experience. And so we have to be really thoughtful about our own individual culture, whichever that might be, whether it's your workplace culture, your community culture, some of us live in some really nice, complexes and things like that. If it's a culture there, thinking about what does it mean when you belong, and then who might not be experiencing that is where you're going to get the answer to how to make that shift. Great question.
That was so good. I hope that you will share the replay of this, because so many great nuggets. Thank you, Amber, for that. And one of the things I'm excited to talk about more is your book. And a couple weeks ago, I was actually walking down Fifth Avenue in New York City, and I had a bunch of bags in my hand, and I was walking past Barnes and Noble, and I saw this beautiful display of your book. And by the way, it's called Allies and Advocates: Creating an Inclusive and Equitable Culture. And I was just so happy to see you in the window. It was such an amazing experience. And I got even more excited because I'm like, wait a second, we're going to be talking in a couple weeks. So congratulations on the new book, Amber.
Thank you so much. I don't think it was real for me until I saw that display. Like, it's something about a book being in a bookstore that like suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I'm an author. So even though I had the book before that moment was very surreal for me.
It was so great to see. I was just like, wow, yes, more of that, more of these displays.
Yes,
so if you're in New York, check that out. But in your book, you talk about one of the themes that I really loved, and you say, allyship starts with you. And I know we talked a little bit about it today, but can you tell our audience what that means, or what you meant when you said that?
Yeah, there's a whole section that's called Allyship Starts With You. And the reason that I organized the book that way is, it starts out by telling you what allyship and advocacy are. And then it talks about that allyship starts with you, because these are things you can do by yourself. A lot of us think, oh, I've got to get into my organization and they've got to get on board and I've got to get all the support. And it's like, there are so many things that you can do independently on your own. And in fact, for allyship to come to life, you have to do that. Like, remember, it's about figuring out what are the privileges that I have that are different than what someone else might have. And each of us are going to experience privilege differently, depending on your job. One of the stories I tell in the book is how I had an acquisitions editor come kind of find me. She took a class that I was in and she was like, yo, this information is amazing. So I think that this would be a good author, and reached out to me. That was her using her privilege, like she makes authors, right? Not a lot of folks get to do that job. And so she used that to say, okay, I'm going to serve as an ally and ultimately an advocate to try to get this book out into the world. And so, when I say it starts with you, it's you recognizing what you can uniquely do. What thing do you uniquely have power over so that you can make an impact on the way people are experiencing belonging?
Oh, that's so good. I just love that. And I often tell when I get a chance to talk about allyship, people think that they have to like climb up to the Empire State Building and it has to be this big, feat. But it's everyday actions,
Yep.
that really do make the difference. And so it does.
Absolutely.
I love that. If you have any questions for Amber, make sure that you put them in the chat. I know the chat is buzzing. There's so many questions. I wish that we had time to get to them all, but we'll pick a few. But before we dive into those questions that everyone else is asking, Amber, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I am a lover of grits and rap lyrics, and I cannot let you leave. I know you like music too, so I can't let you leave without asking you. Well, first of all, how do you have your grits?
Okay, butter, salt, and occasionally cheese.
Okay, all right. See,
if I can have shrimp, I'm gonna add some shrimp to my grits as well, and a little roux. But butter, salt, and occasionally cheese.
Okay, see, we can rock. If you said sugar, then I might have.
No sugar.
Okay, good. Now I know you're about to bring the heat then for real in this next question, but I ask every guest what their favorite rap lyric is and why, and I would love to hear yours.
Listen, I spent my weekend on this, Minda, just so you know. Okay, like I am such a lover of hip hop and rap. I am such a passionate enthusiast that I had to pull out my vinyls and my old CDs and my old iTunes and figure out a LinkedIn safe response to this. And it was fun. I had a great time on my Instagram stories. And so if any of y'all hop over and check me out there, you may see some residue before those stories expire of me trying to figure out the answer to this question. But here is my response. Elevators, Andre Benjamin's verse, the last verse where he says, and I replied that I've been going through the same thing that he has. True, I got more fans than the average man, but not enough loot to last me to the end of the week. I move by the beat. I live by the beat like you live check to check. If you don't move your feet, then I don't eat. So we like neck to neck. That is my verse. Like I live for that. So that's my LinkedIn safe answer.
Now, what resonates? I mean, there's so much in that verse. Elevators is such a great song.
Yes.
And you spit that real nice. I have to admit, you kept that. Okay.
It's authentic. It's authentic. It's in my soul.
What resonates with that lyric with you?
So I love that lyric because I feel like, first of all, I feel like it applies to so many facets of life. But my current life right now, like being an entrepreneur, being, just in this different space that, I'm very privileged and fortunate to, be running a business that is successful and doing well. But I think people look at it very differently. Like they look at it like, oh my gosh, you're doing this thing. You're on this show. You're talking to this person. And I'm like, yeah, I'm working like just like you. Like I am still trying to make sure that I am bringing in money and bringing in business and doing what's going to work to help both deliver what I feel like my purpose is, but also make sure that I can survive and eat. And I feel like that lyric captures that so well. So good.
Now you're going to, when we get off, I'm going to have to go ahead and throw that on.
Great song. It's a great song.
A great song. Thank you for that. And the other question that I have for you is that everybody watching is a leader. You don't have to have a title to lead. We can all do that right now. And it's really apropos when we talk about Martin Luther King and his leadership, right? Mm-hmm. He was able to step in that, and he didn't ask for permission. That was something that he went for. And what would you give our leaders? What tips would you give them to make the workplace better than they found it?
Bring yourself to work. Okay, bring yourself to work. And here's the thing, every work environment's different. What part of yourself you're going to bring is going to be different. I think this also aligns really well with what your book is about. But like it's so important that you bring some really important aspect of your identity, because folks can't include you if they don't know who you are. And so I think that we get to having a world where we know how to be inclusive of the differences in our identities, and we have a workplace environment that is supportive of the difference across us by actually showing some of that. Now, I know everybody can't bring everything all the way. Some people, you know, that rap lyric, you might have muted me because you couldn't let it happen in the workplace. I get it. And, you know, so there are some places we have to be a bit cautious. But in the ways that you can, bring some part of you there so that folks get used to learning to make room for that, so that we can start to have a sense of belonging, so we can start to have a sense of inclusion. We can move past this idea of tolerance, which means like you'll turn a little bit of yourself down and I'll turn a little bit of myself down so we can share a space. It's like, no, bring you. And so I think that's really the critical piece to being a leader that's committed to inclusion. Bring some of you to work. It doesn't have to be all of you, but bring some of you, an impactful piece to work.
Absolutely. I love that. That's just such a phenomenal place to end. And I think so many people think, well, I want to, you know, we talk about bring your authentic self to work, and it doesn't mean you bring everything. You don't have to bring the grits and rap lyrics if you don't want to, but what part of you does Bob and or Keisha need to see so that they feel like there's a connection, and vice versa, right? Because we show up for each other when we kind of have, as you said, when you know something about someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. We have so many questions. We'll try to get to a few more, but one question here, and it's kind of long, so I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. Hopefully I don't take away the essence of the question, but for some of those coworkers who have a history of making everything about them, centering situations on them, how do you handle those type of personalities to shift off of it, the focus always leading back to them?
Oh, so like, okay. So I think if you're dealing with someone that is unable to see the world outside of themselves, the best way to invite them to see it is to ask questions. And so I talk about this in the book. Like, I recommend a lot of questions in the book because questions can really get people to move in a direction they may not have expected. So if you have someone that's very self-centric, you know, and they kind of bring it to themselves, like, well, I experience it this way, or I see this and that, I usually will push back and say, oh, well, how might that come to life for someone that works in X department? Or how do you think that looks for someone that maybe works in a field environment instead of maybe a corporate environment? So that they are forced to have to go, oh, I don't know that. And either admit that they need to ask some questions so they can figure it out, or they have to at least do the labor of thinking about something differently. Questions are an amazing tool. So if you can like practice anything, practice having good questions in your pocket, because it will get people to move to a space without it coming across like you're being challenging or forceful. You can just throw like a strategic question in there and it'll redirect. My favorite question of all time is, say more about that. Because people are like, oh, I got to talk about this some more. And so it makes them, you know, kind of dig into that thought and communicate more so that we can move to a different place. And so someone self-centered, ask them to think about whatever they're talking about in a space that they don't exist in.
I love that so much. And over the last, I'd say, year or two, I've really leaned into asking more questions. So if someone does label you aggressive or angry or feisty, could you give me an example of a time when I was doing
Exactly. Exactly.
Answer the tough questions. They want to put statements out there, but they don't want to answer them tough questions.
Exactly. And here's the thing. You get people to see themselves because they will say things like what you just described. But the minute you say, oh, can you give me an example of a time where, then now all of a sudden they feel convicted because they don't have those examples. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great way to call folks out without being like too pushy.
Hey, yes, that part. Another great question that we have time for is, last year we experienced a lot of performative allyship. Amber, could you talk a little bit more about performative and I guess maybe how do we dismantle that?
Yeah. So performative allyship really simply is that you are doing something that really isn't helping the community that you claim to want to support or the person that you claim to want to support. So really simple way that performative allyship might show up at work is we're having a meeting. In that meeting, maybe the leader bites my head off, right? No one in the meeting says anything, but then after the meeting, people are like walking past my desk like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I saw what happened. That's performative allyship. Like, this is useless. Like, thank you for coming to tell me you saw it, but in the meeting is when I needed your support. And so it's really easy to slip into. It's really easy for it to just happen. And so one of the questions, well, a couple of questions I can give you to kind of help you check yourself about that performative allyship is, one, am I not saying something because I'm afraid someone will judge me? And two, am I saying something because I'm getting a reward? If either of those kind of happen to fall into the, oh, that's true for me, that's an indication that it may be performative. Am I posting a black square because everybody else is doing it and I'm going to get likes? All right. Am I not saying something in this meeting because I'm concerned that someone may see me the same way they see her? That's you not serving as an ally. And so it's those two questions that I usually recommend people use to, if you're confused about making sure that your allyship is coming across the way you intend.
I love all of it. And Amber, where can people work with you, hire you, buy your book? We've dropped the links in the website, in the comments, but we'd love to hear from you the best way to connect and follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go, all things business, you can go to cabralco.com. All things Amber, you can go to ambercabral.com. Or allysansadvocates.com if you're just interested in the book. And that has all my socials and all that good stuff. If you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you can find that information, or here on LinkedIn.
And so many people, we've dropped a link to purchase your book. Get that do a book club, do a book by your company. Everybody could benefit from reading Amber's book. Where do you like people to buy your book, Amber?
So, if you're trying to buy a bulk order, go to allysansadvocates.com and there's a bulk link and we can support with that. If you're going to do a book club, like honestly, any retailer is fine. And as a nugget, in the next week or two, we're going to be dropping a book club guide on our website. So you'll have some good meaty questions to go along with that book. So keep an eye out for that too.
Keep an eye. I love it so much. Amber, you've dropped so many gems today. I'm so honored to have you on Secure the Seat Live. Is there any final words that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked me that. This year, 2021, we spent 2020 figuring it out, y'all. 2021 is the year to bring it to life. So figure out today, particularly on MLK's Day of Service, how can you show up as an ally today? So donate your dollars, but how are you going to show up as an ally today in honor of MLK Day and setting the tone for 2021?
I love it. So yes, if you really want to honor the legacy, you already heard the recipe on how to do that. Make sure that you share this episode of Secure the Seat Live. Again, very excited that you spent your time with us, spent your holiday with us. If you're not subscribed to my newsletter here on LinkedIn, my co-pilot Mike will drop that in the chat too. Want to make sure that we stay connected. And and this is a really monumental week. And I don't want you to forget, shout out to my sister-in-law, Sonia, who made this lovely I'm Speaking shirt. This week is monumental. I know that there's so much going on, and you might have forgotten that we have a first Black woman, first woman of color entering into the administration this year. And so we're going to do a special Secure the Seat Live at 2 p.m. on the 20th. So make sure we'll drop some information later in the week. So stay tuned on LinkedIn, but we've got to celebrate that because that is monumental. And you see Shirley behind me, so I know she's smiling down on what's happening this week. But Amber, thank you so much for being here, and everybody, you keep securing your seat and be safe this week.
Thank you. Bye.